When I was 21, I transferred to a college in San Francisco. I checked out a room for rent on Craigslist. It was in a really nice 2-bedroom apartment. It was cheap rent and close to campus, so it was the ideal spot. The girl who lived there was 29 and her name was Beth. She was tall and wide, and she had jet black hair and wore pale makeup. She seemed nice, although a little quiet, but she seemed to like me and agreed to let me move in. So far, so good. My first night there, we went out for pizza, and that's when I could tell that something was a little off about her. Throughout dinner, she kept telling me how much I looked like Shia LaBeouf. I didn't know what to say, so I just shrugged it off with a thanks. I mean, I look nothing like Shia LaBeouf, so it just didn't make any sense to me. When we got back home, she asked if I had seen her room yet. I said no, and so she took me to see it. Her walls were covered in posters of Shia LaBeouf. She even had printed out photos of him all over her mirror. She owned all his movies. I didn't know what to make of it. It was creepy. The whole night she had been saying I look like him, and now it's obvious to me that she's obsessed with this guy. A few weeks passed, and I never really saw her that much. We didn't spend any time together really. She would come home from work and practically run to her room. She would spend the whole night in there. She had this creepy high-pitched giggle, and I would hear her giggling through the walls all night. I wondered what the hell she could possibly be doing. Occasionally, she would come out and talk for like 2 minutes, and she would always be slurring her words. So I suspected she was drinking a lot. Sometimes she wouldn't say anything, and she would just stand in the hallway and watch me in the living room. I would turn and see her and be surprised and say, "Hello, Beth." And then there would be this long, awkward pause, and she would give out her creepy, high-pitched giggle. It was uncomfortable being around her. She gave me the chills. One night, I woke up at around 2 a.m. because I heard what sounded like the front door being unlocked. I came out of my bedroom and all of the lights were off, but I could still see Beth standing at the front door. She had her face against it, and she was turning the lock back and forth over and over again, and every time she turned the bolt, she mumbled my name. Max Barker, Max Barker, Max Barker. Seeing her standing in the dark and mumbling my name really freaked me out, and it didn't help that she kinda looks like a bigger version of the girl from The Ring. I just quietly went back to my room and tried to sleep. One night I was watching Gladiator, and she stumbled out of her room and turned on the living room light, forcing me to pause the movie, which was annoying. She then asked me if I wanted to hear about her ex-boyfriend. That was an uneasy topic for me, but I just said sure and then awkwardly sat back to listen to her. 10 minutes into her story, and she was so riled up. She was screaming at the top of her lungs about their breakup. I was worried that the neighbors were going to call the cops, and she wasn't listening to me when I was asking her to lower the volume. Amidst all of her screaming, one thing she said really freaked me out. She was in such a fit and yelled, "I'll slit his fucking throat." That was a big game changer. Suddenly, I had no idea what this girl was capable of. She was practically a stranger, and everything I had seen was becoming alarmingly disturbing. After a few more minutes, she told me thanks for listening, and she started doing her giggle. I got out of there pretty fast and went to my room to go to sleep. I had a pretty unsettled feeling about being in the house with her, and what's worse is that there was no lock on my bedroom door. I pushed the edge of my dresser in front of it to act as a little barricade. I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of my dresser scraping against the floor. Beth was pushing the door open. I turned on my light, shouting at her to stop. I could see her through the opening of the door. She was so drunk and had this insane look in her eyes. I pushed the door closed and yelled at her to go to bed. I could hear her walk back to her room, but I couldn't fall back asleep. The next morning, when I went out into the hallway, my heart dropped. I saw one of her steak knives was on the floor by my door. I got goosebumps all over my arms. All I could think about was her saying she would slit that guy's throat. I confronted her about it, and she said she didn't remember trying to push my door open. She said she didn't even remember telling me about her ex. I had enough. My lease was month to month, so I found a new spot and moved out. About a month after I moved out, she contacted me. I was at the movies and my phone was off. When I got out, I turned my phone on, and to my shock, I received 40 plus text messages that she had sent me over the past 2 hours. They were all just insane texts that ranged from everything between "Hi, how are you?" to "I fucking hate you." It was insane. I didn't respond, and I never heard from her again. I always wonder if I hadn't set my dresser in front of my door, would she have quietly come into my room and slit my throat? It freaks me out. I live in a small village in the very north of Scotland, so large shops and resources are a far distance. For that reason, I usually rely on internet shopping to get me my needs. I needed to buy a backpack for when I leave for university, one better than the one that I already have. So, I turned to Craigslist as I normally do. As a student, I prefer to go for the cheap option. Craigslist usually provides that. After looking for a short while, I came across a really good looking bag at only $15. I thought this was an absolute steal, so I phoned the seller. Immediately, what struck me was this guy's accent. It was obvious that he wasn't Scottish, or even from the UK. He sounded Polish or something. He said he was from Glasgow. That's at least 5 hours by car from where I live. But when I told him the area I was from, he reluctantly offered to come to my house to give me it. This all seemed strange, being that the sale was only for $15. Nonetheless, I foolishly gave him my fucking address. He said he'd drop by later on that day. Skipping forward about 7 hours to like 10 p.m., I was thinking that he wasn't going to come, but at around 10:20, there was a chap at the door. Surprised that it was so late, I looked out the window, round to the front door, just to be sure. And sure enough, it was a young guy standing with a backpack in his hand. Slightly relieved that it wasn't a robber, I went to the door and opened up. It was the guy on the phone for sure. The accent confirmed it. He said, "Hey, here it is." I smiled and took out my wallet, taking out $30 because of the trouble he went to come here and the condition of the bag. He smiled and opened his arms as if he wanted a hug. Being a gay guy, I rarely turn down a hug and just assumed it was a cultural thing, so I hugged him and he left. I was still confused that he came all this way just for $15, but I didn't find it overly strange. Boy, was I wrong. At around midnight, I was finishing another episode of 24 and was ready to go to bed. From outside the house, I heard a car door shut, which was really weird for this time of night, and in my area, the nearest house is like a quarter mile away, and I rarely see the people that live there. I paused the TV and went over to the window to see who it was. I recognized the car as being the green sedan that the guy had, but he wasn't there. No one was. It was at that point when I heard the back gate opening. I fucking nearly shit myself. I ran quietly to the kitchen where the back door is, staying low to avoid whoever it was from seeing me from the kitchen window. I usually don't lock both doors till I go to bed, so both were still unlocked. I grabbed the keys from the counter and quickly locked the door. As I did, I got freaked at the security light turning on in the back garden. It's a motion sensor that turns it on. I looked up to see that it was him again. He had a creepy smile on his face, no teeth showing, just a smile. I stood up and shouted, "Whoa, dude, what the fuck are you doing back there?" He said nothing and just smiled, looking directly at me. I found myself just staring at him until the situation actually kicked in, and I took the keys from the back door, then bolted to the front door to lock it. About halfway to the front door, I heard a window smash in the kitchen. My stomach ached at the fact that he's probably making his way into my house. I made a turn to go up the stairs towards the toilet so I could lock myself in there. When in the toilet, I heard him stumbling and broken glass falling to the floor. He was in my house. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and quickly dialed 999. Told them of the situation as fast as I could, and they said they'll get officers out to me as fast as possible. The police station was just up from my village, so I knew someone would get here generally quick. The operator asked me to stay on the phone until someone arrived. I was focused on the guy's footsteps, which would slow down and speed up every so often. He eventually walked upstairs and tried to open the bathroom door. When he realized it was locked, he said, "Ah, I know you're in there, Cameron." Hearing him say my name made my stomach churn. I screamed, "The police are coming, just back the fuck off, man." After saying that, he started to kick the door. I backed up against it with more strength than I knew I had. Then in the distance, I heard the sirens and the blue lights reflecting from the bathroom windows. He continued to kick the door, but then I heard the car doors outside open and fast footsteps. I heard the front door open and then, "Police officer with a taser, drop the knife." Again, I felt sick knowing he had a knife. It sounded as if he started running back downstairs. Then I heard, "Taser, taser, taser," and the guy screaming, then a thump. They officially arrested him for attempted murder and trespassing. I have pressed charges, but the fact is, he won't get any more than 7 months in jail. After that, he will be free to come right back. I am now trying to sell my house to get out of here as fast as possible. My roommate V was always at her boyfriend's place, so I was living in a 2-bedroom apartment, and my friend Esame was crashing with me while looking for her own place. She found a place nearby, renting a master bedroom with attached bathroom, female only, for way cheap. We checked out the Google Street View on my laptop, and it looked like a cute little beach house. She rode her bike over to check it out alone. This house was right by the beach, and tons of people are always around, so we thought nothing of it. She said it was 2 beach-type white guys, a young, disheveled stoner guy, and a middle-aged parrot-head guy that would close talk while giving her obvious elevator eyes the whole time. She's a pretty petite Mexican girl and was 21, but looked younger, and the older guy kept saying she was just what they were looking for, kinda slowly, and what she described as an uber creepy voice. The younger guy just stared and followed them around. She thought it was odd that they each slept in the tiny guest rooms and were renting out the master bedroom, but decided to take a look at it anyway. She said it was a really nice room, with a big, heavy, wooden 4-poster bed in the middle of the room that looked like it belonged in a castle, and the bathroom had a huge shower with multiple shower heads on the walls, like it was built for a bunch of people to shower at once. She didn't like being in the back bedroom with the 2 guys looming over her, so she said it was really stuffy, and she wanted to make sure her unlocked bike in the front yard was okay. She all but ran to the front yard, and once she was outside with bystanders, she felt much better. So, she's standing in the front yard with the older guy, and he's explaining that she can move in right away, but the bed has to stay exactly where it is. It comes with the room and is bolted to the floor, so it can't be moved. They have special sheets for it and everything, so she can bring all her stuff, but can never move that bed. Also, she can have friends over, but only if they're also young women or girls, no men. And they can sleep over, but also need to sleep in the bed. The hardwood floor was just too uncomfortable. The couches in the living room are suede, so no one can sleep on them. All these reasons why a big pile of girls need to sleep on the bed. So, she's sufficiently creeped out by this guy and texts me to come over. I ride my bike over, and as I'm pulling up, she's leaving. We start to ride a little away, and he yells out after us. It's mandatory, but we always have a blast. She kinda shudders, and I ask her what's up. She says she'll tell me over drinks, so we ride to the nearest little beach bar. She explains about the room, the bed, the guys, and then tells me part of the deal is a mandatory skiing trip to Lake Tahoe in Northern California each year. She can invite girls on the trip that have been to the house before if the guys think they're cool enough. It's free for her and her girlfriends, but mandatory that she go with the guys as their official women. There would be other men there, but they all brought their own women. He said it like the women would be assigned to them or something. So our minds start racing, and we convince ourselves that the bedroom and trip are some elaborate webcam BDSM situation or something. Needless to say, she never moved in there or took them up on their free ski weekend offer. V ended up moving in with her boyfriend, and SMA moved in with me for a couple years. She was an awesome roommate. Not too long ago, I put up a post on Craigslist asking to either sell or trade my fish tank for a smaller one. I put in my phone number as the contact source and asked to text only. After a couple of hours, I got a text from someone who was willing to trade. We agreed to meet at a Walmart in a couple of days when we were both free and do our trade. During those days, the guy kept on texting me, involving me in small talk. He asked me about my name and where I worked, etc., and me being foolish, answered his questions. I use Craigslist often, and I had never really had a bad experience with anyone, so I never really thought this guy was weird. I saw him more like friendly. I told this guy what car I drove and what college I went to again. Never really stopped to think what kind of info I was giving a total stranger. When the day came to meet this guy, he told me he could only meet after 10 p.m. I thought that was odd, but agreed to meet him anyway, since my poor fish were already stuck in a 5-gallon jug. So me and my boyfriend drove to Walmart at about 10:15 and got there in 20 minutes. The guy texted me and said he was already there in an old yellow Camaro. I replied saying, "We are here too." He then texted me and said, "Who is we?" At that moment, I realized something was really off with this guy, and I replied by saying, "My husband and me." That was a lie, but I felt he should know I wasn't alone. He never responded after that text. My boyfriend and I went around the parking lot a couple of times, looking for the yellow Camaro, but we never found it. I tried calling the guy, and he ignored my calls. We decided it was best to just leave. I don't know what would have happened if I had met this creep by myself, or even with my BF there, but I have a feeling it would have not been something good. I removed the post from Craigslist that night and saved the creep's phone number just in case he tried contacting me again. A couple of weeks later, I got a text from several different phone numbers asking me about the tank. I never responded to anyone because I believe it was the same guy, since I for sure deleted the post immediately. I hope he can't somehow track my phone, and of course, I'm not using Craigslist anymore.